Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Create Your Best Life with Rex. This is an emergency show. I'll tell you what, my original guest, Alana Sharps, she's an author, coach, specialist in uh, people who've gone through difficult divorces, and a custody battle. So she's going to be on the show another time. She had camera trouble, so she wasn't able to be here. But I've got two incredible gentlemen who stepped in at the very last minute to help us out. So I want to introduce you to both of them. It's Doug McCall and Martin Steffers, and I hope that I got the pronunciations all right. So I'm going to bring them on up, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves to you, and we'll discuss the world of business and what they do and how they help people and how we can help you right here on this show. All right. So without further ado, here comes Martin, and it's Steffers, right? Stefors. Is it
Stenfors, Stenfors, Swedish name.
Stenfors.
Yep.
And this is Mr. Doug McCall.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Rex.
And hi. And Martin is the founder of a company called Silver Drill, and you too, Doug, are with Silver Drill. So we will go from there as we learn more about you. Could you tell us about Silver Drill then, Martin?
Absolutely, yeah. So after having worked in the global corporate business for about 30 years, managing huge portfolios like HP and others worldwide, everything that comes to services and such, and then also some North America operations, I left the corporate world and realized that my time is a resource. And if I start using that, I only have that time. But I have so much ideas and, concepts in my head. So I left and started Silver Drill, and now I'm using my imagination. And Doug and I have some concepts that we're now bringing out to the corporate world based on our experience. So it's very exciting.
Awesome. Well, that sounds great. So we'll ask Doug to share a little bit more about that.
Hey, everybody. How are you doing? My name is Doug McCall, and I'm very familiar with Martin Stenfors because we started working together, almost 20 years ago, Martin, at a large global corporation. And we both kind of traveled the same trails, and I had started a business called Advanced Business Consulting Solutions. And Martin and I wound up back together and said, hey, what if we could come up with some programs that would help corporations along the way, understanding all the pitfalls that we've seen globally and along the way, and primarily involved in a thing called outsourcing that we're all familiar with. So we took all the lessons learned and we began going through them. And I'll tell you a little bit about me. Other than being in the business for almost 30 years, I'm a proud lifelong student. I believe in education. And I worked my way. I did use these corporations to work up through my associates, my undergrad, my MBA. And finally, in 2023, I achieved my personal goal of earning my PhD. So, and that was in organizational development, transformational leadership. Lo and behold, Martin and I ran into each other again online and said, well, you know what? Here's what I'm doing. Martin said, well, here's what I've been doing. And said, so we said, let's pull it all together and do it together. So here we are.
Fair enough. And I want to thank Danny Walsh, my friend, my co-host, and someone that I work with for making this introduction for us happen. And I apologize. I mean, it's the last minute, but you are so awesome to step on in and to talk about the different kinds of issues and difficulties that people are having in the corporate arena and what we can do to mitigate that or to help make their work easier, better, more profitable, all that sort of stuff. So thank you.
Yeah. And I have to mention as well that Danny is our coach. Danny has been phenomenal in helping us putting these packages together. So really exciting to work with him and him to introduce us or to you, Rex.
Really nice. Fantastic. I'm very pleased, very happy. I'm convinced that nothing happens by accident. Even if it does happen by accident, it's all good. It's all wonderful.
Yeah.
And so where are you located right now, Martin?
I'm currently, after having lived in Bay Area for 20 years, I now live in Bend, Oregon. Beautiful place with amazing nature and a buzzing town that is growing quite steadily.
I spent a lot of time in Bend in the '80s, but I haven't been there in at least as long. So
It
uh,
has changed quite a bit.
bet it has. I bet it has. But that Central Valley, nobody realizes there's a desert in the middle of Oregon.
I know. It's even when I came here the first time, I was surprised. You look to the east and there's a desert, and you look to the west and you have volcanoes with snow on top of them.
It's gorgeous. It really truly is amazing. And
Yeah.
Doug, you are
I'm coming to you from beautiful downtown Waukesha, Wisconsin, just outside of Milwaukee. And I've been up here for about 17 years now. Prior to that, spent about 9 years in the Atlanta, Georgia area and grew up in the Ohio Valley. And interestingly, my dad, I don't know if you're familiar, was part of what they called the Hillbilly Elegy. Our Vice President J.D. Vance wrote a book called The Hillbilly Elegy about people that migrated from the state of Kentucky up into Ohio and went to work in a steel plant. That was my dad, and I worked there for 16 years before venturing out on my own.
wow. Well, let me ask you this. It's a very important question. You've been in Waukesha for 17 years. Have you learned to get around there yet?
Pretty close. and I'm learning the language. You know, you don't pronounce it Waukesha, you pronounce it Waukesha, because all the towns in Wisconsin are two syllables. And I did learn right away when first moving here, we do have two full seasons. There's winter and there's road construction.
This is true. Very true. Very true. And so, gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. So, your business, well, could we start with the purpose of your business, your mission, what it is that you're doing, and then how you fulfill that? Well,
Absolutely. So the purpose is, of course, to bring the knowledge that we have gained throughout the last 25, 30 years from working I have worked in over 80 countries around the world, and bringing all that together, because what we saw during this period is that I was sent around the world to train people, to coach people, and to drive corporate visions and such. And every time we came somewhere, I came somewhere, it was like speaking to deaf ears. They had heard everything before. They knew where we were, and they were like, in one ear, out the other ear. And it was like really strange, because I was, paid well, and I traveled around and thought I made a difference and all that stuff. And, I'm originally from Sweden. So traveling around the world, experiencing this was a big thing. But it became frustrating, because you wanted to make a difference, right? But nothing happened. One day it clicked, working with all these companies, and sat there and like, why don't we achieve the results that we're looking for? And realized that everything was top down. We never listened to people. We never asked for their input. We never engaged them. Or if we did, it was very little. But we just had messages from top down that had come from the consulting company or from C-level saying that this is what we're doing. Never did we work with change management. Never did we embrace the risks or looked at anything. So, but then, I left the world thinking that I could make a difference, and started a food safety company, because I used to be in charge of health and safety and food safety for Sodexo in North America. And started to work on this concept. And then I ran into Danny, and Danny was like, you have a gold mine. We need to do something. So we started to work together on this, and he has been really, really good in helping. So what we do then is we go into companies and we look at different things. It's like the triangle of fire, right? If you don't have fuel and heat and fire, you won't get the fire. It's the same with large corporations. If you don't have a good strategy, a good culture, and embrace change, you will never succeed as a company. Some companies have amazing strategies, but they have a horrible culture. I've worked both Doug and I have worked for companies that have this fear culture, and nothing happens. But they have a fantastic strategy, and they don't understand, why don't we succeed? It's because the culture is horrible. Same thing, then you bring in change. People resist change all the time, and especially if things are coming top down. So we guide people. We're not coaches. We don't tell people how to do things. We don't go in and train them. We work as facilitators. We help them go through everything themselves. Because if Doug and I come in and start telling people again how to do things, it will just be same old again. So we actually go through, and I'm a global certified facilitator as well. So we go through a concept where we hold their hands. We're kind of like they say in Germany, Reiseleiter, we're their tour guides in helping them achieve the goals. And one company we worked with, we actually helped them save over $200 million by implementing this program. Obviously, a huge global company, right? But just them embracing and understanding that pushing things from top down won't work, and embracing change instead of resisting it makes you very adaptive to the market, and you can then generate savings, which is far easier than generating profit many times. So this is what we're doing. We go into them and we help them revamp what they're doing, but having them doing it instead of us standing there telling them how they should do it.
Wow. Well, I appreciate that. And I appreciate both of you. And I appreciate both of you for being here. I want to throw in a couple of things about what you said, because I do think it's important. First is, I think the three most dangerous words in the English language are, I know that.
Exactly.
People, I've been training and teaching and facilitating workshops for 50 years, and people come in and go, oh, I know that. Or you give somebody, a suggestion that they could do, and they go, yeah, no, I know that. And then they don't do anything with it because they know it. They don't tend to act on it, in the same way. The other wonderful thing that you said is this top-down thing. That is so accurate and so often the case. Some people want to be entrepreneurs so that they can be the boss, not so that they can, add a service. And some of the bosses in the corporations, and some of the cultures are top down. Give you an example, a silly one, but it's relevant to me. I go to the gym, and there was something that came up. He said, "I'd like to make a suggestion. You got a suggestion box?" They go, "No." I go, "How can you not have a suggestion box? You're serving all these people."
Yeah.
They're like, I said, "Well, how do I make a suggestion?" They were like, "I don't know." I'm like, "You're kidding me, right?" And the ability to take feedback from your workers as well as your clients or your customers, or for your family members, for that, the ability to be able to adjust and take feedback, is really important for people to be able to grow and move forward and implement the kind of changes. But what I do really appreciate is I've used this analogy for decades. I'm a tour guide. When you say you're a tour guide, because a tour guide walks with you and points out what there is that's beautiful to notice and what might be dangerous or what you should avoid. They don't do it for you,
No, exactly.
And so
Yeah.
I love that, the analogy, the metaphor, because that truly, is it's kind of like you elicit change and understanding from people instead of telling them what to do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
right.
did this the first time I did this was back in 1998. I lived in Helsinki, Finland at that point, and there was a large Finnish mobile phone company. I'm not allowed to mention the name, but I think we all know who it is. And they were losing market shares to a huge Swedish mobile phone company. Same thing there. And they contacted us and they were like, what are we doing? What are we doing wrong? We have a much better product. Why can't we do this? And same thing. It was top down. So what we actually did, we took them out on an adventure trip out in the forest. We brought them all out in buses to the middle of nowhere. We gave them the Finnish military tents and said, this is where you're sleeping. And they were like, but how do we open it? How do we do this? They were like, if I tell you how to do that, you won't learn anything.
Right.
And this is the problem with your business, because you have a top down all the time. And people feared. And I remember the CEO of the company, he was furious with me. He was like, I'm a CEO of this company. I'm not going to go out in the snow and do this. And I'm like, you hired us, and here we are. And then we went through the whole process of guiding them. The next day we had 10 stations where they had to complete tasks. And in the beginning, they start to ask us questions. How do we do this? And I'm like, no, if I tell you how to do it, you will fail, because I will not be in your conference room or your office all the time when something is happening. You need to learn yourself. So we taught them change management and Meredith Belbin's team roles for them to understand what different roles and different people you need in a team to succeed. I'm proud to say that they succeeded to cut down meeting times from 1 hour, 15 minutes to 45 minutes. And it doesn't sound very much, but if you're a company with so many people and there was the culture that when there was a meeting, there were 5 people sitting around the table and 40 people standing along the walls because they were so afraid of missing out of something. And if they missed out of something, they would not be involved or be important. And we changed all that, and we knew we know the story that they then took over and became one of the leaders of this industry before the smartphones came out. So fascinating to see, and that is what Doug and I are trying to implement and share that knowledge with so many people.
Yeah, and some other things, Rex, that Martin and I both observed when we talked about it, with corporations, many of them. And if you look at corporate life cycles, and I'm also certified in change management and a member of the National Society of Leadership and Success. And if you look at corporations, by and large, especially the ones that perform outsourced work, they have 2 trajectories throughout their fiscal year. One is sell, sell, sell. The other one is cut, cut, cut. And so I myself experience that because when you're working at that level of a corporation, a director or above, oftentimes you're what they call above base work, you're overhead. And so when it comes time to cut, they eliminate the overhead and they lose a lot of value there. But the one thing they overlook, though, is save, save, save. It's replaced by cut. Well, we discovered, much like Martin's strategy and culture and that, I took on the people, process, and intelligence instead of people, process, and technology, because intelligence isn't just data. It's having actionable data that's current, that's real, that you can get your business head around it and be able to drive business-related decisions. So they lose a lot by not looking to the savings end of things, how to do their business better. And it's sell, 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 or cut. So that was a valuable lesson.
No, thank you for that. Both of you, thank you for that. The other thing that I noticed, in working with corporations is they tend to cut when they can't sell. And so they're cutting out the best things, the training, the development, the inspiration, the motivation to get their people, mobilized and ready. And so they scale back and cut back and draw the purse strings tight and then wonder why they're not progressing either after they
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we concentrate on, and that's the talent in both programs when we combine them. It's talent retention and talent attraction, right? Because what happens when a company is not going well and you say they do cut, it's always the best people leaving first, right? Because it's easier for them to get new jobs. And then they're left with not necessarily bad people, but not the highest or best talent. So in the programs with people, processes, and intelligence, and then strategy, change, and culture, we focus a lot on talent development, talent retention, and inclusivity. Because once you have a talent and you include them in when, where, how, and why, then they feel ownership of the company and they feel like they brag about it and they're proud to work there. And Doug lives in Milwaukee. There we have Harley Davidson. Yeah. People actually tattoo the name on their arm because they're so proud of working for it. I haven't seen, I hate to bash on companies and I don't mean it, but the companies I have worked for, I haven't seen a single employee, including myself, having those company logos tattooed on my arm. So it's so important to retain that talent, develop it, and then you will grow.
Well, part of the fallacy with that also is when you look at talent, a recent study showed that the U.S. has a 47.29% turnover rate in all businesses, and of companies themselves, they have an 18% turnover rate, 12 of which is voluntary, people voting with their feet and walking away. So that tells you there's opportunity to build a strong culture, build people's talents and skills, and be able to do things.
Well, and it's interesting to note that Harley does have a very strong culture, both inside but mostly outside of the company. You know, I mean, the people who dress Harley, buy their products, buy their cycles, tattoo themselves, you know, inside and out. I mean, they are amazing with what they've been able to produce in terms of the culture. I want to come back to something though that you said because and talk a little bit about that. You know, I call myself a trainer, but again, we go back to tour guide. And the only reason I do is because people understand that in some ways, some understand it better than facilitator. I also say a catalyst, you know, or, you know,
Yeah.
I'm the guy who stirs the soup, you know, to bring the stuff to the top. But is the discovery method, you know, instead of telling someone what to do, if you can assist them in discovering it and finding it out for themselves, they own that more than if you hand it to them. And that's what I appreciate about what you're saying in terms of methods that you use to work with people, is to help elicit from them the best stuff and elicit from them probably the way to eliminate what they don't want and to introduce what they do want without having to be preachy about it and you know, that sort of thing. Because we can talk until we're blue in the face. You know, in fact, when you were talking about, you know, I was going to say if I was flexible enough, I'd put my foot up in front of the camera and I just mime shooting it, because so many companies end up shooting themselves in the foot with the, you know, the cut and methods that we're talking about. So go ahead.
Yeah, no, and you said something very important there and early.
Oh, you kind of froze up there.
Oh, must have a. You're
We-
saying
A little bit of a glitch there with you.
Don't know how to bring ideas forward, right? And they're scared because they're not in a sea level to share anything. So, and through the tour guide method, you allow everybody to bring their ideas forward and be heard. And one of the rules we have when people come into the room where we are tour guides is there are no titles, just names. Because if there are titles, people will be like, oh, what will my boss think if I say this? So the first thing we say is turn off your phone and take away your titles. And it brings, and then throughout the tour guide process, they're allowed to add their comments and things on, you know, in an anonymous way if they want to, but everybody is heard. And after they have been heard, they feel like they belong, they feel pride, they're part of it, they're part of discussing the challenges, the solutions, and then the actions. And all of a sudden you can see kind of energy in the room of people like, wow, I'm part of this, I'm actually doing something, instead of them sitting like this, looking at their phones all the time because they have heard everything about inclusion, they have heard everything about diversity, etc.
Well, you know, another aspect of what you do and is that I appreciate again is children learn more through play and curiosity and running around and using their imagination. I mean, now they're on phones and tablets and, you know, games and all that. But in the old days, they used a stick or a rock, or they climbed a tree. But they constantly moved their body. They chased butterflies. They learn more in those early years of development than they ever do going to a school, where they're taught to sit in a desk and then regurgitate facts and figures that are mostly meaningless to them. Now, adults, sadly, in most cases, are conditioned to react the same way. You can see it when they're sitting in front of you, when they script their face and they're trying to figure you out and they're trying to understand what's going on, and they're kind of suspicious and skeptical, you know, because people are pouring it down their throat. But adult learners are incredible when they want to learn. You said lifelong learner. You know, if you're a lifelong learner, you want to learn, and you have that joy of learning and the ability to acquire the expertise in whatever area it is, whether that's cooking or computing, whether it's, you know, financial or having fun. The more that you can inspire a person to love learning, be curious, and explore what's going on, and play with the stuff, you know, the easier job it is. And so what do you do with these companies that have this top-down mentality that, you know, did you do this, I mean, you said you took them out in the woods and gave them tents and said, okay, figure it out.
Well, Martin and I have a thought process also, Rex, that's called the invisible executive. And you have your corporate hierarchy with your C level, with your executive level, your director level. But guess what? Down below there is a lot of intelligence and a lot of talent, a lot of information, and we call that the invisible executives.
And that's an excellent point. You know, and here's, I'm going to argue something, and you tell me what you think.
Okay.
When COVID hit,
Mhm.
some of the first people that wanted to bail out in the United States, some of the first companies were the airline industry.
Yeah.
Remember, you know, like when the car industry in 2008 or whatever. And my argument at that time, and then when people didn't want to go back to work, they're complaining, well, we're going to fold if the people don't come back. We need our ticket takers, we need our baggage handlers, we need the people at the gate, we need the pilots and the stewards and everybody. And if they don't come back, we're going to falter. My argument is, if you treat people poorly, they don't want to come back. If you realize that the top people in the corporate wealth all come from all those people that have disappeared, and you were to treat them really well, give them a voice, let them say what's going on, have a feedback process, and pay them what they need in order to live well and thrive, you would have more company loyalty and people wanting to contribute. Because so often, I think what you're saying is so often that gets shut down. That people, it's like,
that is so true. I did my dissertation, Rex, on the impact of COVID on remote and hybrid employees. And, you know, and something like that, you gather the facts, you don't give your opinion. And what we found was the hybrid employees that came into the office a couple, 3 times a week for meetings and trainings, that had a stronger company culture.
Yeah. And we worked for, both Doug and I, must be, I don't know, Doug, 15, 20 years ago. I don't want to mention the company here. I don't want to point them out. But we worked for a large high-tech company as service providers, and we managed their real estate portfolio worldwide. And it was very interesting to work with them because they had decided that 50% of their workforce would start working from home. So we had to adjust how we provided our service to them, because all of a sudden we didn't need that many people, and the spaces were empty, so we didn't have to clean them, etc. After about 6 months, something really interesting happened, and it's scary in many ways. I sat in a meeting with HR, and HR said, yeah, we have problems. And I'm like, what problems do you have? I thought we, service provider, had done something wrong. And they said, yeah, the level of innovation has dropped, and we have more sick leave. We have people that are sick, and they thought that people were sick because, you know, they were home so they could go and play golf or whatever. But no, what turned out to be was that, first of all, when you don't have the people in the office, you don't have the water cooler effect where people meet up to talk and share ideas. So you lose innovation. That's one thing that we address, how to work on the innovation and to be more innovative. The other thing, which is really scary, is that when people work from home, you don't have that daily interaction with your colleagues, so you don't know what's going on in general. But what happened was that people were sick. And when you come into an office, people say, hey, you look pale today. Are you okay? But when you sit at home working and you don't see your colleagues, you don't have that interaction. So they had actually far more people that had gotten severely ill because they didn't have that daily interaction. That's what the conclusion we came to, because nobody is telling you that, hey, you look pale, you should go to the doctor. Are you okay? So you lose that. So to your point, the employees and the company, how you work with them, where they feel included and where they're part of something. And the point that you made, I love it, because we have all started somewhere, right? We know what it's like to be new. We know what it's like not to be heard. And I think it's Doug's and my duty to bring that back into the C-level for them to understand that, yes, you have, you know, quarterly targets that you need to meet, but to be able to meet them, you have to have the people with you. It's not enough for a soccer team. And there is a famous Swedish soccer player that used to work for me way back then. And, you know, the Swedish national team in soccer sometimes didn't do too well because he was the only lead player. And if you only have one lead player, one strong CEO, doesn't make your team win. And that's what addressing and making people understand that you need that team. And it's not, I have to say this because a lot of people love to have opinion, and you talked about children and adults. The difference as well between children and adults is that children normally don't judge. Adults are very good at judging, and we're trying to remove that as well, because that judging never ever helps in an organization.
God, that's beautiful. I just want to stop right there and take that in, because it's very true. I mean, you see these memes now of kids, different colors, holding hands or whatever, and they go, hatred isn't natural, it's taught. It's those kinds of things. I think that's the idea, that children don't judge, and that adults, like I would say, it's okay to be skeptical. I mean, that's normal, but to be cynical is to be closed-minded.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
And one other thing, or maybe a couple other things, and I want to give the floor to Doug, but in a brainstorming session, you're supposed to take everything that comes out of someone's mouth. You don't shut them down while you're brainstorming. You later call out the best answers, but it's the free flow of information, and it's that exchange. And you mentioned, which I think is wonderful, and I'm going to use an analogy in a different business, but is the idea of being isolated at home. In the old days, it was, oh, hey, we're all going to telecommute someday and it'll all be great and fantastic. And then when we have the chance to telecommute and we experience different things, now there's both pro and con, and we've found some good stuff and some not some good stuff. But, more people die from loneliness and isolation than almost anything else when they're at a certain age. So being either deliberately ostracized or unfortunately ostracized or unable to connect. Here's my analogy. In the old days of television, when there were 3 networks and syndicated channels, everybody watched the same thing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They all watched essentially one of 3 networks, the shows. And then the next day they would get around the coffee cooler, they'd be at the office, and they could talk about that show that they watched Sunday night or Monday or Tuesday. Now that they're streaming and everything else is fractionated into splinter groups where, Martin, you can just get the content that you want, and Doug can get just the content that Doug wants, and I can get just the content I want. None of us may have anything in common at that point. The film industry, because I'm part of the film industry, has grown so much, and there's so many channels that I can't even. Back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, you could know all of the TV stars that were on TV throughout the entire week, because there were only 3 or 4 hours of television each night. Yeah. So you could know all the stars, maybe not all the coasts, but you knew almost everybody. And a show like Gunsmoke lasted 20 years. So think about that. Every week, with the exception of the summer, where there are 12 empty weeks of repeat, every week, mostly between 24 and 36 weeks, you developed a relationship with the TV characters. And that went on for 20 years.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And now you can binge everything in a weekend or in a week or something like that. And you can do it on your own with no one else around you. Nobody else knows about it. And so with all of the innovation we have, we're actually more isolated than we've ever been in many ways.
And I still watch Gunsmoke in syndication, Rick. There you go. A couple of things that I have, I use a steamroller analogy, and it works well, because pretend we're all on a giant steamroller. If you're riding behind it, you're not really keeping pace. You're not doing well. If you're beside it, you're just tagging along, go along to get along. If you're in front of it, God help you. But guess what? The seat's big enough for all of us. We can all get on the seat together. And a thing I learned from a VP of Human Resources I worked for many, many years ago said, in every engagement, always treat people with honesty, fairness, dignity, respect, and trust. Make sure those elements are in everything you do. If we just did those 2 things, get everybody on the seat together, treat each other that way, wow, what a corporation we could build.
So let me put this, because people always talk about financial incentive and that kind of thing, but is it not true that most people do more for recognition or validation than they do for cash? I mean, cash is great. I'm not dissing it, but that if they got cash plus the recognition plus the validation plus the inclusion, that because so much of it's happening in corporations now, where things are taken away, people, their exit packages are reduced, or they're kicked out, or currently we're seeing a lot of people just fired like at the last minute, go away.
Wow, that's
It,
powerful.
it's funny because Doug and I talked about this the other day actually, because one of the companies we worked for, we did a quick study of one of my teams if they would prefer to get a 2 or 3% raise or recognition, a digital diploma that they could put on LinkedIn or somewhere to show that, I was the safety manager of a year, or I was the operational manager of a year. And I was, stuck in my old corporate thinking. I thought, oh, money will be the teaser, right? But I think it was 85-90% of the people said definitely recognition. Being recognized for what I'm doing and what I contribute with and where I come from, that I can use next time instead of making $400 more per year before tax. I mean, 100% recognition. So you're absolutely right in that comment. And we see that all the time. People want to be recognized. They want to be heard. They want to be included because it makes them feel important. And we all want to be feel important, no matter if it's in a relationship or if it's at work or if it's in an activity that you do, a sports activity or something like that. We're looking for that. And that's why I've talked about kids. That's why kids do so many things as well, because kids want to be recognized, right? They want to be awarded, like, hey, good, you did well. Exactly. It's so much better if they then get the lollipop or an ice cream. It's fantastic. But the same thing applies. I'm so amazed because Doug and I, we're all of us perhaps around the same age. And, I thought when I was 18 that when I turn 50, I will be an adult and I won't think about these things. Same principles still count.
Wow.
And one of the things I learned too in working with business excellence teams, and that when you come into town, when you go to a unit or go to a location, and somebody says, "Oh, you're from Atlanta or you're from Milwaukee or that," I learned to say, "No, it's not really about me. 5 words. Tell me about your job." And you can tell from the responses what type of culture the individual feels a part of, how they feel about their work, and that kind of thing. But it means a lot to them that you're saying those 5 words. Tell me about your job. And look them in the eye and mean it. And that just goes so far to help beginning to build the culture.
I love it. I love it. I have, again, I've been doing this stuff like you guys for a long, long time. And one of the things I have is the go first rule. It's one of Rex's rules. Always go first for something that you want. Demonstrate it. Like if I want you to respect me, I give you my respect. If I want you to listen to me, I listen first. If I want you to do something for me, I do something for you first. Without going first, you're making requests or demands on other people, but you're not making it available for them to do it easily because I have recently I've been consulting for some schools recently and grade schools, which I haven't done in a long, 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 long time. And so in the last week or two, I've been in some grade schools. I got to say, some of the most incredible experiences of my life. When I got done with the first day, I called family members, everything. You're not going to believe this, The teachers are so often underpaid, under respected. They don't get their due. I mean, there are good teachers and not so good teachers. There are good facilities and not so good facilities. But where I was, I got to say, to see the way the almost the unconditional positive regard and the ability to help people, these children from 1st to 6th grade, move along, and we had special needs children, and we were dealing with special needs as well. I was so blown away. A lot of these teachers don't make any money; they have to pay for all their supplies, and they do all this stuff, and they do this day in and day out. And the first day I was there, about every 30 minutes, I went to a different room to sit, to observe, and to talk. And what I noticed, and they're doing this every day, and it's almost thankless to them. But what was neat for me was yesterday I was doing it, a different day, and I was sitting next to one of the special needs children, and the people that were taking care of were just so loving and kind. And the student, just a regular student, got up and went over to the main teacher and showed her the work that he was doing. But the way that she received him when he came up with such openness and so, yes, like what let me, oh, look at it. He walked away beaming. He wasn't sitting there bragging or anything. He just walked away feeling so good from that interaction. And I was like, God, I'm so lucky to be able to witness this, because I would have no idea that this was going on in schools. And by the way, Doug, this is a Wisconsin school this is happening in Waukesha County. So I mean, I'm just totally blown away by people who give. They give their respect, they give their attention, they give their service. They go long beyond the hours that they're needed to. And I just got to say, it's just one of the most wonderful experiences in my life. I mean, it truly is amazing to watch the way these kids are responding to the teachers. And if we can do that with adults in business, because we're always a kid sometime, somewhere.
One of the things,
Yep.
one of the things that Marge and I do that's so rewarding is because everything your business needs is there. You just need to uncover about 3 secrets. And as you said, Rex, stir the bowl and it'll come to the top. And that's how the businesses succeed.
And, to that point, it's also like you said, it's understanding. It's everybody can listen, but listen and understand is a completely different thing, right? So sitting in a school, in a corporate environment, in a relationship, wherever you are, we have a tendency, we adults more than kids, that we listen, and before we have listened to the end, we start formulate our next comment or answer in our head, and we are so eager to wait for a turn so we can say what we had thought about, and we have missed the point. I think Doug and I actually sat in a big business meeting once, and we had one person sitting there he was so eager to speak up and share his point of view that he stopped listening to the half of the last sentence and completely missed the target. And that's one of the things that when we go out and we tour guide these companies, if we tell people what they should see rather than listening to them what they want to see, we're failing, because we can take them up a volcano and really they want to go down in a cave. So it's so important to put that ear on the rail and try to understand what they're actually trying to achieve. And to Doug's point, most companies have all these resources in the company already. They just haven't understood and listened properly to them.
That's a very powerful and beautiful point. I would add something too. When you work in groups, as you do and as we do, if somebody says, I have this problem, you notice how many people will jump in and try and fix it for them, as opposed to asking a question of how they might fix it themselves. I mean, people say, well, you should do this, you should do that, you should do this, you should do that, try this, try that, and so it kind of, depending on the group we're working in, you have a moratorium on giving advice or giving, but it's because they hear what they want to hear coming from the person, or they hear the problem the person has and go, and they don't bother to stay with it long enough to understand what's going on, or to, if you were to ask, so where might you go? What might you do? In other words, to guide them rather than to tell them, which is what you guys, I love your approach. This is great. And I wanted to say before, is that silverdrill.com is the way people can get in touch with you, correct?
Right.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because we've been showing it, but I don't, other than when you said it in the beginning, I don't think, I pointed it out.
And remember, Rex, it's just like the little girl in the 6th grade when the teacher said, "Who was Socrates?" And she held up her hand and said, "He was a very wise man who went around giving everybody advice, and they poisoned him."
Indeed. Now we've talked some about the issues, and we've been pointing at solutions and some things that people could do. But there are people right now trying to start a business. They want to be an entrepreneur. They got 3 or 4 or 5 businesses, or they're in startup companies or whatever, or corporations where they're upper the administrators or upper management, things like that, for whatever. And Doug said, well, there's about 3 secrets that we could share. I don't know if you're going to share all the secrets, but are there things that we could point people at to notice, to beyond what we've discussed already, to consider embracing, so that it makes their job, either as an administrator or a solo or entrepreneur, or somebody working in whatever arena that is, that would make their life and their job and their tasks and their ability to succeed easier?
Well, the one thing you mentioned there, Rex, that's very important, I believe, is that if you treat your people like entrepreneurs, they will bring you information and they will help you in your business. And Martin, you can chime in there, but that helps shape the culture as well.
Yeah, and the culture is so important, like we talked about before, to set the right culture. I mean, I lived out in Bay Area in Silicon Valley, and if you live in Silicon Valley, you have to have a startup. So I had a startup, still part owner of it, but what happens is that they're so successful. I mean, yes, 1 in 100 survives, but when they start, they're all so excited about starting, and they have all this gung ho and energy and all that. And most of them fail because they grow too fast, or they get venture capital money, and they haven't built this foundation that you need to have the right culture, to know what your vision is, and to be adaptive so you can change on the spot, because things change, right? You have a great solution, a great team, a great market. All of a sudden, COVID happens. Where did the market go? If you're not adaptive, then you will fail. So the companies that survive are the ones that embrace change, try to control it or manage it, same with risk, and then build a strong foundation. So no matter what happens, you have a corporate foundation that helps you stand with your feet on the ground, right? My dad was an architect that had a big architectural group back home in Sweden, and I spent a lot of year in Italy because he was an archaeologist as well. And he always taught me that the key thing, whatever you build, focus on the foundation. Because if you have that foundation, you can build anything on top of it and you will be successful, and you can change it. And I think that's what a lot of inspired entrepreneurs fail. They have great ideas and all that, but they fail to build the foundation, because it's so hip now to have a startup and run and show how much money you have gotten for a venture capitalist, instead of focusing on a steady growth that will help you, rather than spiking and then just collapsing.
Oh, that's great.
There's another neat thing here, and I'm looking at the screens, and I see Rex's book, Life on Your Terms. I see Martin where it says your best life. Guess what? This is your best life. It's your only life. So live it on your terms. Get up every day. I like to get up every day, look in the mirror and say, I can change something for somebody today.
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful. Two of my heroes, and they are heroes of mine. And I don't know that much about them. I mean, I'm not there devouring books on their life or anything like that, but the concept of them were the Wright brothers.
Yeah.
Because the Wright brothers were bicycle bicycle guys that decided they wanted to build a heavier than air aircraft when we'd never had anything like that. And they encountered all sorts of opposition from family and from friends and everything. Their own dad was like, "You're an idiot, guys, give it up, stop embarrassing us with everything." When they got to the point where they could, get some of the flights at Kitty Hawk and stuff, nobody would show up. The press wasn't interested. They all thought these people were insane. But on top of that, they tried things and they kept making mistakes, if you want to call it mistakes. And every mistake they did, something didn't work. But they were wise enough to, one, stick with it, and two, make adjustments, to understand that what they were getting was feedback and they had to adjust something. So my point always is they didn't know how to fly until after they flew.
Exactly. Yeah.
All the while they were training to fly, they were experimenting. And this worked, did that work? So they're so open to having feedback, which you talk about, which so many people are close, to getting, for whatever reason, ego, money, but the ability to be resilient, the ability to adjust, the ability if you're down to get back up, the ability to shift gears or take a step back, to be flexible is something that I just want to. I'm trying to just extra emphasize the point that you've made there, because it truly is a crucial skill for people to develop if they don't already have it.
And we often are in this. It's a very, very good point, because we are, like we talked about before, we're judged, right?
Right.
And we very often hear that that's impossible, or you cannot do that, or why are you doing that? somehow society has been created in a way that we're trying to, instead of saying about like, wow, that's a fantastic idea, how can I help you? We are like, yeah, that will never work. I had an idea many years ago when I lived in San Francisco. I was like, ooh, I will start a company that rent out garden tools and house tools. And I'm like, I talked to a friend who was a developer, and he's like, what do you mean? And I said, we all have a lawnmower, we all have a drill, we all have something in the garage, and I'm not using it more than maximum 1% of my life, right? So why do I have it here? And I talked to him and another person, that will never work. That's horrible. That you should not do it. That's a waste of money and time. Now there are companies in the US and in Europe that do exactly the same thing. And I fell in the trap. I was beaten down. I stopped believing in myself, thinking that, they're most likely right. I couldn't do it. And it takes strength to get above and beyond that, to believe in yourself. And I think that's part also of our message in the people portion, to believe in yourself, believe in your strengths, believe in your weaknesses. If you know your weaknesses, I'm very privileged having an amazing fiance that is always helping me to grow as a human being and grow as a person. And I resisted. I'm like, oh, I don't need that. I know who I am. I know what I can do. But no, there's always growth. There's always something, if it's personal life or corporate life, where we can learn and become better and contribute in a better way.
Absolutely.
Wow. Well said.
So it's fascinating. We really love what we do, because we see that we're helping individuals and companies.
Well, no, that's very clear, and your enthusiasm and the way that you express yourselves about what it is that you do, I find really tremendous and wonderful, because there are so many people who they judge, they stop before they start. I guess for about 40, 50 years now, I go, what stops most people? And the answer is a thought. People say they talk themselves out of something before they talk themselves into something a lot of times. And you both demonstrate this openness and this availability and a willingness to assist others by exploring the possibilities, the opportunities, and the resources that those others have, both inside them and from around them. And that is really impressive, because
and the one thing businesses need to understand, and business executives and business people right down the line, is you're not doing it all wrong. You're doing it different.
Yeah.
And I think we have both Doug and I have been there working for some of these companies where we're constantly beaten up. I asked once many years ago what I could do to become a vice president. And I was told that I'm not going to use the word here, but I wasn't an a-hole enough to grow in the company. And I'm like, wow, I didn't think that, it didn't say in my job description that I needed to be that to grow in the company, but that was the mentality, that you had to be that to grow. And I'm like, why do I have to be like that to grow?
Well, you raised this. This is an incredible point, and we're going to run out of. We won't run out of time, but we're going to have to close here shortly. And I'd love to have you back at another time and have another, official show, and have you here.
Yeah.
You raised a really important point, and that is there's so much almost predatory toxicity in business. Crush the competition, just work really hard, do all this risk, kind of flagellate yourself and everybody, beat them into submission and make sure that, you kind of like put them out of business so that you can succeed. I love money. I don't have a problem with money, but I don't think money, I don't do it for money. The money happens to be the reward of doing something for something else. You can make good money. So these people who are so, I know there's a fiduciary responsibility to stockholder and all this kind of stuff, but it shouldn't be, in my opinion. In other words, yes, if somebody invested in you, you want to maximize their investment, but it should be people over profit. It should be, common decency over, the demands that sometimes happen in business. So if you're not an a-hole enough to be vice president, that speaks volumes to the mindset of of how they do business and how they treat their business people, as well as how they would treat their customers or clients. If someone's just a mark or somebody's just another dollar for you, that's very different than if you're like, oh my God, I can't believe how, how do I serve you? How can I help you up? Because so many people are into it for that tiny reward instead of their long-term look at what we could build if we uplift and edify the very people we're trying to buy or serve or produce things for.
If I could leave people with a thought, Rex, it's honesty, fairness, dignity, respect, and trust equals integrity.
Good. I love it.
Yeah, it's thank you for having us, and it's really inspiring because this is we're working on this. We're passionate about it, and the money, like you said, the money is not the first thing. If we do this right and we're passionate, the money will come to us, and none of us is looking to become a super billionaire. We just want to do what we think we believe in, and that helps. And it's fascinating to work with people and see people grow and companies grow.
So Martin and or Doug at silverdrill.com. If we can answer a question, if we can help you with anything, even a thought, let us know.
And there it is, silverdrill.com. Absolutely, gentlemen. We're gonna have to say goodbye. I'm gonna invite you to remain in the green room for just a few moments while I close out the show. I've got something I have to do, and I'll come and see you, and we'll say goodbye officially. But hang out, and thank you so much for being here, both Martin and Doug. You guys are awesome. I'm very happy that it worked out this way, and because we might not have met otherwise, and here we are. So
yeah, and just miles apart from each other too.
And yeah, we're just miles apart from each other currently, so that's cool. And we'll have to fix that too, and actually meet up sometime soon. But let me say so long for now, and then I'll see you in just a couple minutes backstage.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, I really appreciate that show, and I appreciate these gentlemen, Martin and Doug, for being here. They stepped in at the last moment because Danny Walsh happened to be with them at the time when my guest, whose show, we were to do, had camera trouble, and so we couldn't do it. And I had pretty much left the studio, and Danny said, hey, I got somebody here for you. I'm thrilled, and I am, and I'm grateful to both Martin and to Doug at silverdrill.com. So what you see behind me is my book, Life on Your Terms. It is helping people change their lives all around the world. But when I say that, a book doesn't help you change your life. The book has to be read, and the concepts and principles decided need to be applied. And who applies them? You do. I do. And that's how we change. But the book is a powerful book because it's a blueprint of steps and principles and practices and methods that you can apply to make your life easier, more fun, more filled with love and the kind of relationships that you want, and also develop the kind of business acumen that you want to have in order to make more money, to be wealthier, healthier, happier, and enjoying life so much more. So go to rexsikes.com/book. Go get the book from Amazon, and then follow the instructions that you find right there at rexsikes.com/book. Because if you do that, I will gift you a bonus training. It's an online video training. It's valued at $497, but it's about mastery and how we master our skills, how we master our mindset, our feeling set, our words, and our behavior, so that we get more of the results that we want to be getting. And the cool part about all of this is the mindset piece, because if you consider something a problem, it truly is a problem. But if you consider something a blessing, it truly is a blessing. So how you look at it matters. And that's why I say celebrate everything. So with that, I'm going to say so long for now. We'll be back next time. I've got a new guest next show, and we'll have Elena on at another time as well when we get the camera thing sorted out. And you just keep coming back to rexsikes.com. Subscribe to the show. Hit that bell notification if you like the show, so that you're always notified when I have a new show. And then like, subscribe, comment, and you can even ask questions after the fact. Because oftentimes my guests, when the replay is available, they will see the comments there at where they're. Let me see. I'm going to put it up here. Here. You go to Rex to create your best life with Rex at YouTube. They can see the comments and they can answer questions there as well. But also reach out to them through my guest today through silverdrill.com, and we'll see you the next time. Thanks so much for being here. Again, celebrate everything. I love you.